this over to you. Have you know how to set this up?
What's that?
Have you set these up before?
I have. I mean, if I have, it was long enough I've forgotten. So.
All I like to do is I like to string it up underneath the shirt.
Sure.
Bring it over to the
Yeah.
right side. That's going to be the template.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, it's different sync if you want to like just make sure it's like positive and
Gotcha.
also because it's not if you feel the start right here.
Oh, that's the only thing.
Okay.
Yeah, this is green if you're on.
Okay.
Unmuted and we can keep going.
Okay.
And I like to put this in my back so that we can kind of like.
Yeah. Gotcha. So you want me to turn it off now? Or?
You can if you want. Just remember to turn it back on. Gotcha right here. Okay.
Check, check. Whoop. Is that, can everyone hear me? Yeah, I think so.
You sound delicious.
Thank you.
Crystal clear.
All right. Oh, got to get this on here, right? All right, cool. Everybody getting settled in? What number is this?
Number?
Yeah, meetup number.
6. Just a 6.
6 or something. All right, thanks everybody for coming out. Hope we had enough seats. Everybody got some pizza. We're good on food. Everybody got a drink. Everyone's good. How's everyone doing? Awesome, awesome. Good to hear. Well, yeah, thanks for coming. Welcome to, I think it's our 6th, 7th, 8th, I don't even know, meetup this year at DEVx. Yeah, I just want to say thanks for coming out. Hosted by Edge, of course. For those of you that don't know where you're at Edge. All right, see if this thing works here. It doesn't. So I'm just going to use this. Okay, so a little bit about what we're about. We are a community of like-minded individuals, particularly developers here in San Diego. Yeah, you guys probably already know that. So what we're really all about is sharing with each other on developer-related topics or experiences, connecting, and ultimately just growing. So yeah, we're just really a bunch of cool people like to hang out. So hopefully everybody's having a good time doing that. So you can find out more about us if you're ever interested at devx.network. That's our official website. We have a lot of, all of our info should be there. Big shout out to our organizers, AJ, DJing in the back. We got Tristan as well, who unfortunately couldn't make it today. He wasn't feeling well. So that's a little unfortunate, but awesome dude. Make it out next time, you'll be able to see him. Myself with the phony AI-generated image.
I knew immediately that's what it was.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw it.
It just came out looking like Steve Jobs, so I had to keep it. And then Zane in the back, awesome organizer. So big thank you to all of them for making this happen. So also big thank you for Edge, to Edge, for hosting today and pretty much mainly all of our events. For those of you who don't know or aren't familiar with Edge, Edge is a wallet and exchange platform for cryptocurrencies. It's pretty much the #1 crypto wallet and exchange platform in San Diego, I should say. Maybe because there's not that many, but yeah, I like it. Full disclaimer, I do work for Edge, so I'm going to be one of their biggest boosting of them. With Edge, you can easily and safely store your crypto assets with full self-custody and autonomy and privacy. So if you sign up, there's no email, none of that. It's just your funds and your crypto. Also, quick mention, Edge is fully open source. So we're all developers here. If you guys want to peek at the code and audit it yourself, you can do so at GitHub/Edge app. So check us out. And if you have any crypto-related questions, I'll talk your ear off, so come to me. Our facilities, we have, who can read that? Do you want to turn down a light? Where's Zane? I want to make sure it's clear. OK. For those who haven't connected already to our Wi-Fi, it's Edge Guest, and the password is I like big bits. If you're going to bring your laptop and do a lot of coding and a lot of heavy prompt engineering, you're probably going to need to connect to the fast Wi-Fi. So restrooms, perfect, thank you. All right, restrooms are in the back, out the front door to the left. There shouldn't be any code, but if there is a code, you can just tap on our shoulder. We'll get you settled in. All of our upcoming events are on Luma. So subscribe to our calendar there at lu.ma/devxsd. Luma is an events platform just like meetup.com. However, it's our preferred alternative. We try to get people on there because it's a lot easier to use and a little bit more friendly UI to find things on there. You can also find this link on our DEVx website as well, devx.network. All right, so our agenda today. We already had our lunch networking time, so hopefully everybody was good on that. So we had enough pizza and whatnot. If not, just let me know. We'll kind of gauge it for next time. And now we're going to go ahead and follow up with some of our speaker presentations. After that, we'll do a short community announcements. This will be like a chance for anyone who is interested in announcing something to the community, just saying hi. They can grab the mic, say hi. So we want to give everyone a chance to kind of welcome themselves. And then after the announcements, we'll be doing networking, hangout, what we're doing right now, maybe some code, who knows. And yeah, then we'll close around 4. We running a little bit behind schedule, but if we are probably going to end a little bit earlier than 4, so just make note of that. We'll probably end around like 3:30 really. So that is it for our agenda. As for our speakers, we have had 3 speakers today. Unfortunately, Tristan was going to do a talk, but like I said earlier, he wasn't able to make it. So we only have 2 speakers today. We'll start with George Hawkinen. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Probably not. Probably doing a horrible job of that. He'll be talking about AI code gen for end user programmability. So that sounds pretty interesting. And then Greg Gradwell will be doing a talk on Elixir. If anyone is unfamiliar with Elixir, I believe it's an awesome programming language. He's probably going to be showing off some cool concurrency and stuff like that. But yeah, stay tuned to the bottom talk from Tristan. He'll probably be doing it next meetup. So follow us on Luma, and you'll be able to check that out. Looking forward to that talk as well. So without further ado, let's welcome our first speaker, George, onto the stage.
Great. A little bit of feedback.
Cool.
Check, check. Not too loud? Great. Okay, this is going to be pretty, whoa. Yep. This is going to be pretty low tech, high concept. My slides are just 5 HTML files. I have some prompts. The real meat of this talk for me is about interpretation, but instead of telling you what I think that means, I'm going to just jump into some demos, give some examples, and then we'll talk about interpretation at the end. All right, so I like beauty. I've been doing procedurally generated art for a while. I like painting with code kind of stuff. And I was curious how much I could sort of collaborate with cutting edge LLMs to facilitate and sort of speed up my iteration loops so that I don't have to write as much code and I can just sort of like have ideas and tell it to do things. So what I have here is just a little scaffold where you can draw a path, and then along that path we're going to render something. And that render is just, it's a block of code, it takes a path and it paints to the canvas, right? So if anyone's not familiar with like Canvas and JavaScript, you can paint shapes, colors, yada yada. I'm using a library called P5. The big reason I'm using this library is that it has a bunch of very simple functions that ChatGPT knows very, very well. And so we're going to see how ChatGPT can actually write P5 code to be able to make new paintbrushes that we can play with live. So this thing that I've shown you right here is actually a brush that it already made. I told it to make a bunch of circles, right? And here's my prompt, but we can go and we can make a new one. So I'll show you the prompt. So I'm telling it to write some code. I actually had it make white ones. It tells it that it takes a path. It tells it what the path is called. For those who are interested in the details of this, I create a new function in JavaScript that binds the path variable inside of the scope of the block of code that ChatGPT is going to give me. And then I have all the boilerplate for like capturing the mouse events and being like, this is the path, and now we're done drawing, and now let's go render it. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT if instead of a bunch of circles, it draws vertical lines down from each point on the path. Yeah? Okay, so it draws vertical lines down from each point on the path. Try to make this bigger too. Oh, that's terrible. And I tell it to give the output in a particular format. So here I can just take it. If all goes well, I can paste it in here, save it, refresh this, and then we give a bunch of vertical lines. So now I can update it. I can be like, now make those lines start short and end longer. I guess I can hit this. And we can see if it can do this. And now it starts with shorter lines and ends with longer lines. Okay, so this is all well and good. It's kind of nice that we can like ask it and we can just plug it in, and depending on what kind of a brush you make, it may or may not have errors. But this iteration of going and being like, well, I want to control more things about this. I want my iteration loop to be faster. I don't want to have to go and ask it to go and change every single thing that I want to be different. I want to be able to play with it. So what we're going to do is we are going to ask it to extract the parameters. So for example, right here you see this dat.gui up in the top right. Try to make that a little bigger. So here I have some parameters. And here you can see I have a start size and an end size, and I will actually live re-render because of how I've set up the boilerplate. And we have a color that we can change. Okay, so this is actually was already made by ChatGPT through the prompt that I have right here. But we can write something else that's going to automatically extract parameters, and you can see if I'm not bluffing, if it can actually do it. So you can see right here, I tell it, give your output as a dictionary with code and params. Params, I'm just telling it to do an object. ChatGPT is actually quite good at inferring schema and outputting things that conform to it. It's not perfect. They now have a JSON mode in the API if you actually want to like have things that are guaranteed. It's based on JSON Former, which came out like a year and a half ago. It took them a while to roll it into the product, and it's still not on the front end. But okay, so I tell it, I suggest that it does things in this schema. And now you can see that I have the code from the output code and the params from the output params. I'm still doing the render path in the exact same way, but for making the GUI, I just go through the parameter keys, and I go and inject them into this little dat.gui. So if you haven't used dat.gui, it's a little library, I think, made from Google to just make a really quick GUI to be able to adjust some parameters. So we can do something else. Let's say we want to take our lines, and we can say it draws a bunch of vertical lines starting at the points on the path. They begin small and end larger. And we see that it's outputted some parameters, and it has some initial ideas about what those parameters should be, which, having spent a bunch of time doing procedural art, it's kind of an art to know what kind of parameters you want. But okay, there's our path, and we can change the weight of our line. We can change the minimum height. We can make that really small, and we can make the maximum height. And we see that it's just linearly interpolating between those. Okay, so that's all well and good, right? We have a little painting app, and you don't know how powerful this thing could be. Maybe it can only do super simple geometry. Maybe we can try to get it to do more sophisticated things by being like, we want to draw 7 copies of the path at slight offsets and color them like a rainbow, right? And we could see if it could do that. 7 different paths, copies of the path, at slight horizontal offsets in the colors of a rainbow. I haven't actually tried this, so I'm doing the like live coding where I actually have very little control for my demo here. And I expect we'll get breakages when we push it hard enough. Well, that's nice. It extracted all of the colors for me. All right, take it. Put it in, see if it works. How nice. And we can change the offset, but I want line width in there. Allow me to adjust the line width. Also, for what it's worth, in P5, this is actually called stroke width. So if it can interpret line width, it's demonstrating that like for a user who's not quite as technical, maybe they can actually just speak in natural language. We see that it calls it line width here, and we can see it says stroke weight. See, I didn't even remember what it was. Or rather, I hope it's actually called stroke weight. We'll find out. Okay. Try again. All right, weight, great. And now we can draw rainbows. And great. Okay, so well done, ChatGPT. You could imagine making a little Photoshop-esque app where you have layering and you can actually make things and like manage your brushes, and you can have an API that sends these things and a person can type them in. I may or may not have spent a couple days doing that. I saved you all the jank of my UI with these much simpler things. But go home and do it. It could be fun. All right, so we have path rendering. That's nice. But functions to render data can be of any kind of type. And so the inputs that we put in to the canvas before we tell ChatGPT to render it don't just have to be a path. They could be two paths. We could make a brush where we draw one path to do one thing and another path to do another thing, and then we're like, hey, make us a function that takes two paths and does whatever we want it to do. So I'll show you my default example here. And there's one path, and here's another. So this just interpolates between the two paths. It draws a number of copies of them. I can make it more, make it less. And we can change the color. It's automatically interpolating between the color. Great. OK, so we have two paths. You can do some fun things with this where it's like you want to, depending on which way you orient around the path and the interpolation, you can actually make some kind of fun geometry with this. OK, so we have a two-path brush, right? I am not a Photoshop expert, but I've never seen this used. And it's actually something I wanted for a little while in my procedural art stuff. And so it was kind of fun to play around with. So we have a two-path brush. Now let's do something a little bit different, because I like taking us to a new place every time. So OK, you can see that it says it takes two paths. They're giving us path 1 and path 2. You already know how that's done as binding a function with the relevant parameters. All right, so instead of end paths, which are linear interpolations, we'll say it draws lines between corresponding points on the paths. So this is nothing too sophisticated. We're going to go and update this in a second. But just to show you once around that we can get it to do something reasonable. Still no breakages yet, too. OK, so we have one path and we have another. Nice things. Again, mathematically, if you do some weirdness, you can get some fun shapes and yada yada. Right? So what I really want to demonstrate here with these interactions and the geometries is that you get affordances by cutting your iteration loop down so low that you can just have whatever inane ideas and play with them and play with the sliders and toggle how they work. So that's really what my workflow revolves around when I'm playing around with this kind of art. But OK, I told you that I would have a follow-up. We're now going to say, draw circles along those points animated in time. Make them colored as a gradient from the beginning to the end. OK, so I showed you a little bit the live re-render of one of those paths earlier, where we could change the sliders and whatnot, and it would actually update the render, right? Because it's all code. It's not a Photoshop sort of paradigm where you are coming from this physical world of composited ink that is static, right? We have data, which is our brush strokes as points, and then we have the pixels rendered, which is just execution of blocks of code. So that allows us to do things like hopefully animate. Oh, it didn't do it. OK, first failure, ChatGPT. I'll show you a different brush, which I had saved, which did do it, rather than save you the watching me try to prompt engineer the thing. OK, so this is a slightly different one. This is the same as the lines one that you saw first, but it swaps the offset. So instead of them being exactly lined up, it's just cycling through of the first one gets connected to the second one now, or to the third one, or so on and so forth. So now we can actually draw with animated brushes. And you could imagine being able to draw with particle effects, being able to draw yada yada, right? OK, so I told you that I did this with ChatGPT. Take my word for it. If you want to see more things, we can play with it later. I want to keep my slides short, so I'll spare you more animation stuff. Distracting. So we've done single paths. We've done two paths, which we could do arbitrary data constructs, right? rectangle selection, right? Rectangles are a different kind of data type than a path in that they're just 2 points, but you can interpret them in different ways, right? So they're interpreted as an area. Of course, you could interpret a path as the closure polygon, but we can have ChatGPT draw us rectangular things. So for example, we could have it introduce some randomness. And we could ask it, what do we say here? Oh yeah, I was asking it to do like triangular subdivision of a rectangle and then like paint things in there. I'll show you a simpler example rather than that one was being a little bit finicky. It samples random points in the region, painting them with a given color and size. Samples n random points. And you notice I'm being a little bit technical in my descriptions. Being a little bit technical sure helps when you're trying to get it to generate code. If you just give these tools to a layperson, sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. I've tried with some friends. It's been mixed results. But I will tell you that if you first have ChatGPT formalize their idea a little bit and describe what things need to be rigorous and then have it follow itself up, you get much more consistent output. All right, let's see what it does with our rectangle here. Okay, so I'm drawing a box and it's sampling dots, right? So now we can sample dots and sample dots. Now, you could imagine, and I didn't actually make this, but you could imagine making workflows where you have one thing that's, say, sampling a bunch of starting points like this, and then you could have another thing that, given a single point, it's like a one-point renderer, and it draws a blade of grass. And then you just hook them together, and you're like, I want a thing that calls this other thing, make it for me. And then you are painting with procedurally generated grass. Maybe it has noise built in. You can adjust that noise on the fly, see your landscape like change live, right? Okay, so we've done rectangles, we've done paths. One last note that I wanted to show. We've done all of this on a blank canvas. It's really fun when you can actually manipulate pixels. So far, we've been like doing geometry, but when you start manipulating pixels, you can get into images. So if we take this image of the Library of Babel, and we ask ChatGPT, what are we going to ask it? Someone want to give an example? So what do you want to be able to do with a rectangle on an image? Bend away from the cursor. Cool. A lens effect? Okay, let's see what it does. Okay, it gets the P5 image data, and for all the pixels within the rectangle, it bends them away from the cursor with a lens effect. Let's see what happens. It can write code faster than I can read it, so we're just going to plug it in and see what goes. Okay, what's going to happen? Okay, we have lens strength. We have two colors. I don't know what they do. We're going to draw a rectangle. It looks like it bends them towards the cursor. Oh, we got a crash. We got a crash. We got our first stack trace. So somehow it broke. From the center of the rectangle. Okay, great. Let's try that. Instead of doing it relative to the cursor, make it relative to the center of the rectangle. I like this format of live audience participation to like instant code rendering. Like, it's kind of fun. Yeah. All right, let's see what happens.
It's like an interview.
Yeah, ChatGPT, now jump through this hoop. Hey, it looks like it's shrinking them. And if we do it over and over again.
What do we change the string?
Well done, ChatGPT. All right, I'll also show you one of the ones that I enjoyed, which it's very simple, but it just flips it, right? So like you can tell it to do very simple manipulations, and then it flips the region inside of the rectangle, and pretty soon you can move pixels all over the place. I don't know of a Photoshop tool that does this. I imagine you could script one up. But the ability to ask ChatGPT to do this and then within about 30 seconds, like, be playing around with it is pretty fun. OK, so that's all of my demo. How am I on time? Good. Do I have a little bit to talk about interpretation? Or should I leave people without any? A couple minutes? OK. So I said I wanted to talk about interpretation. And at like a base level, right, there's the interpretation of like, how do I make sense of this talk? Right? Like, is my job disappearing, right? And that's not at all the interpretation that I'm going for. The interpretation that I'm going for is actually that the current place that we find ourselves, as far as I can tell, is we are in the position of being intermediaries of building interpretive contexts for these tools to allow us to do things that we couldn't do. Now, we see this potential most in places that are already rigorously evaluated. So like you go into your REPL, right? It's an interpreter. You type things and either it actually does something or it's an error, right? Whereas you go to college and get a degree in English and you've written papers and your professors have interpreted your papers and assigned you grades and you've gotten feedback and that has gone into it, but it's much harder to evaluate. So we've started in this really rigorous place, and what I wanted to show here was something that it is rigorous insofar as it is running the code. It is not rigorous in that sometimes the results that you get are not what you expect, and they can be useful anyway. And so we are going to see, I think, tools in which we can have interpretive contexts for AI-generated output that the context informs the ability of the output to be well-structured enough to be useful, that the interpretive context is what we're fundamentally interested in. So whether that's making art, or that's actually working on your writing, or that's making an app, right? But the point being that like the way in which that interpretation happens really matters, and it's actually much more about semantics. And so when you build spaces in which the AI can have rigorously interpretable semantics, you end up pushing the boundary of what you could do before. Thank you so much.
Check. Questions? Anybody have any? Do you want to do some questions? Okay, cool.
I don't know anything.
There's one in the back. I feel like people would be really interested in yeah.
Yeah, I got really worried when you rushed off the stage. Okay. So
it's the first time I've done this.
I actually have a couple questions. I'll try to make them quick. I'm going to go from order of most important to least important. First question, I guess it's more of a personal request. I really liked the rainbow marker drawing thing. Have you considered making NyanCat the cursor, and then when you hit push down, it plays the NyanCat song?
I believe in you to have ChatGPT do this for yourself.
Okay. So I've actually done a few things in P5 before, so it was really cool to see somebody actually using it. I thought it was just for nothing, but you've made some cool stuff. Could you show us maybe your best piece that you've made? Like, because you said you did a lot of generative art, and I would really, really like to see some. If you could show us one really quick, that would be awesome.
It's broken, but I haven't.
Not as broken as mine, trust me.
I haven't touched it in say like 7 years.
These look amazing. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so I was working on a little procedural art library framework, whatever you want to call it. So this one is actually inspired by, I think it's a sketch by Jared Tarbell. Anyway, I think he may have been the Etsy founder, but he also is an enthusiast of procedurally generated art. Anyway, so it has this interface. If you go to my CodePen, you can play with these things. Yeah, and you can change where the points are. You can change how they originally, right? Like, yeah, and you could imagine all of the functions that do all of these buttons could be written by ChatGPT quite readily at this point.
Thank you so much. That was really cool.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
And
question.
are you going to publish this on the Discord, perhaps some of the links?
I have like one sketch that I
Okay.
can, or like one code pen that will actually like do the interpretation. Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Coriano, just a question about the prompting, because that's something that I'm constantly trying to work on, is how to, when it comes with ChatGPT, how to kind of prompt effectively. And so I just was curious if you can talk a little bit about your process, because I thought it was really interesting kind of how you're breaking it down, and just wanted to see if you had any pointers or kind of how you're able to get ChatGPT to.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and it's like so new, right? People haven't written the books on this stuff. I come from just having played with it a lot and playing with other language models pre-ChatGPT. Like, I went and scraped all of the poetry off of DeviantArt back in like 2012 and built my own Markov models and was like making nonsense back then and just like seeing how I could initialize it, right? But I would say play with it a lot. The models get better and better, so it's actually easier now than it used to be. I find that repeating myself helps, and if I take a more technical vocabulary, it ends up making for more technical results. The rainbow one, like, as I said, when I've given this to friends and been like, hey, tell it what you want it to do, like, it's really hit or miss, and like sometimes it doesn't do anything, and sometimes it breaks, and like sometimes they actually get something, but sort of understanding the scope of what it can and can't do is just a matter of, you have to try it a lot and see what's possible. But that constantly moves.
So thank you for presentation. It's awesome. I like it. Quick question, just maybe from curiosity and stuff like that. It's like looks really cool way. I don't know if you ever tried. Did you ever try to create a brush and import it to Photoshop and have your own brushes like that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I understand, brushes in Photoshop are mostly stamps, in that, like, as you move along the path, like, the stamp just gets applied. I have played more with Procreate, and their brush system is pretty cool in that it has a bunch of parameters, and they govern, like, how streamlined the curve is and how it's resampled, stuff like that. So you could imagine, depending on which system, making things for that. But I mean, the way that I'm doing it here, right, it's just blocks of code. So Photoshop does have a scripting environment. I don't know how well you would be able to try to like interface this into that, but it would be a possibility.
Making our way down.
Thank you for the presentation. It was great. I had a lot of fun seeing you generate some art. I actually, on the failed GPT response, there was a key value pair of time, which was set to 0. I was wondering if you set that time variable to a number, if it might give you something. But I don't know if you still have that.
Yeah, I don't think I have that one, but I
right there. See the commented out. It's
yeah.
line 75. Change the 0 to
Oh, it can't change it. What if we change it to a number?
yeah. That was fast.
Oh, yeah.
Oh!
Okay, so
That's what I wanted to
while
see.
we're at it, I'll show you the one that. You can play with this one on the CodePen, but and it has the prompt built into it. Oh, nice. So that's what I was going for. Yeah.
Hi. Thanks for the presentation. Now I know where to find all my new tattoos. But my question is there any reason you're avoiding using like a Copilot or some kind of like AI plugin for code? Or like
So I do use Copilot. I use Copilot. The reason that this is between ChatGPT is mostly because the prompts are big, and sometimes I want to do iterative things, right? And be like, and now do it like this. I'm not a Copilot wizard, so I don't know how to like get it to rewrite things based on new prompts or something like that.
Okay, I can probably help you.
If you want to give me a little crash course in Copilot, I would take you up on it.
Okay. Well, actually,
you could have Copilot redo my talk from scratch.
Someone did do a presentation on Copilot, but I use something else called Cody, and that's free, and it works pretty well.
I will note that I have Copilot installed, and it will automatically complete the prompts that I want to make to pass to ChatGPT, which is a really weird workflow where I'm like, where do I exist in this?
I mean, at the end of the day, you'll just be the computer. The computer's telling you what to do versus you telling the computer what to do. Any other questions for the AI Bob Ross?
Right. Following up on the animated brush, there's a program called Black Ink. It's in the Steam store. It's about 10 years old. They have a variety of animated brushes and those types of things. And the reason I know about it is it can do the rendering on your GPU, so it can do a lot of stuff really fast.
Totally. And if you go for it, you can actually have ChatGPT generate you shader toy examples and just go and plop them in. I wanted to keep it relatively simple for this, and also diagnosing those is a little bit hairier.
All right. Any other questions? I think that's everything. Thank you so much, George. We appreciate it. All right. Next up, we have Greg. He will be presenting on Elixir, which I'm really excited for. All right. Is that green on there?
Yeah, it should be. It is green.
Should be in.
Yeah, I think so. Perfect. Good. Test. Yeah. Yeah. Sweet. All right. Hi, my name's Greg. I'm the founder of a company called Verver, and I say founder in the sense that I quit my job, and so this is, you can be a founder. It's so easy. Just stop getting paid. Yeah. It's just like the fact that no one can prove that you didn't manage a Radio Shack, right? Like you can throw that on your resume, no problem. Has anyone heard of Elixir before? Got a couple. Okay, that's more than I was expecting. It's got, I guess, the dubious honor in this year's Stack Overflow survey. It was the second most admired language, with the largest discrepancy between most admired and most desired. Right? It's like 73% of people admired it, and 4% or 5% are desired. Right? So people hear about it and think, oh, that's cool, and then no one uses it. But a lot of people do. I mean, it's a small community. I think there's a lot of benefits. So I'm just hoping to introduce the new people to Elixir. Hopefully you might find a use case for it. And then we've got Nerves, which is essentially embedded Elixir, and that's how I use Elixir. So let's go. Okay, so first, just talk about what is Elixir, what is Nerves. We're gonna have a flawless demo, of course. Real quick, I just want to show you an example, the thing that I'm working on. So what Verver is and why I'm using Elixir. So what I've got here, with Verver, we're building a platform to combine virtual reality, basically a platform to let you move through virtual reality safely and more immersively, which means we're putting you on a vehicle. while you're wearing a VR headset, right? So the first reaction most people get is that sounds incredibly dangerous, which it could be if you don't trust your software. So I've got Elixir running on this go-kart that is fully drive-by-wire, steer-by-wire, and this go-kart is driving itself. So I really want to trust my code and trust the fact that if anything crashes in that code, that the go-kart's not going to go haywire, right? That I always have some aspect of control of this go-kart. So that's Elixir, I think, is great for situations where you really need something to be robust. You need it to be fault tolerant, and maybe performance. You want to be performant, but you don't need to eke out every last little nanosecond of performance, because it's not going to be necessarily hard real time, but if soft real time is fast enough for you. So that's where I'm using Elixir. Okay, I know very little about Elixir, about software in general, right? Like I've learned, it's like I went to a big party and I met someone I knew, and I just talked to them for the rest of the evening, right? Like, so I know I've broken off a very small chunk of the Elixir language. So I'm going to give you such a poor introduction. There's so much more to the language. Hopefully, if you see something that piques your interest, go find out for yourself. There's a ton of great resources. I use it for a very specific use case. There's way more stuff that you can use Elixir for. So don't think that everything you see is like the only thing that you could use it for. Okay. Elixir is a dynamic functional language for building scalable and maintainable applications. One thing to note there, it's a functional language. It was my first functional language. I don't know a lot about what functional languages are, but they write a little differently than a traditional language. I'm not even going to try to explain what a functional language is, because that's how little I know, right? Yeah, look it up. But you'll notice the code reads in a little more sense that you're writing more like, what do I want this code to do? And you're able to just kind of write it in that sense. There's probably functions that already do what you're trying to do. You're not reinventing the wheel every time. And so it's a little, I don't know, like going from C++ or C, it feels different. You're not going to write a for loop in the same way that you would. I don't know. I won't get into too much of it. But Haskell is another functional language. Any other functional language programming? Yeah. So, was that Perl? Is Perl? Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it takes a different maybe sort of mindset, but it's really not that hard once you get into it. So how Elixir was built on top of Erlang, which was developed by Ericsson for their telecom like phone switching. So they needed something that was maximum uptime, super robust, able to scale. Ideally, you could just if you needed more capacity, you just add another server and it's able to handle more phone calls, right? If you've got a phone call, if you have one problem with a phone call, you don't want it to affect any of your other phone calls, right? So they needed something that was kind of siloed, and that's why they developed that. The way Elixir runs is you've got the Elixir kernel, the Linux kernel. On top of that, you've got the Beam virtual machine, or the Erlang virtual machine, however you want to call it. And that is handling all the separate processes. So on top of this, you've got your code running, and your code is running just different processes, which you can think of like threads. It's kind of a similar analogy. And so the Beam handles makes sure that each process gets enough time, that one process isn't hogging all the CPU. So it handles all the behind the scenes stuff, so you can just worry about your code. I know very little about how that works, just kind of know how my code works roughly. So benefits, again, fault tolerance. One process can't take down another process, which is great, right? So you could have most of your code still running, even if you have something crash, and we'll show that how that works later. So kind of the philosophy of Elixir is let it crash. I'm not trying to make sure that nothing can ever go wrong in my code, because I'm assuming that something's going to go wrong, right? There's going to be bugs in the code. So rather than checking every single edge case, because I can never have anything crash, you say, okay, we're going to let it crash and make sure that when it does crash, I can recover from that crash. And again, not the whole program crashing, just one of my processes. So you also have to plan, you kind of have to assume that at any given point, one of your processes might crash and come up. So you can't rely on, let's say, it having the same state or this state persisting all the time, right? So you can't say, oh, I told it that thing one time. I know that it's always going to be that case, because maybe that process will have crashed, and of course it was so clean that you didn't even realize it, and so it's going to come up within a clean state. So it takes a little bit of rethinking in terms of some of your architecture, but overall I think it's a huge benefit. It's concurrent, again, so you've got lots of processes running at the same time. They communicate via message passing. I don't know if anyone's used ROS, Robot Operating System. Has anyone? Yeah, a few ROS users. So ROS is similar in that you've got this ROS master, and it handles all the message passing. So you can have different processes running. I've used both. I prefer Elixir. Granted, you don't get a lot of the built-in stuff with the ROS because it's got such a specific use case. But the concurrency is so easy to use just out of the box. You want two processes to talk to each other, you just send a message from one to the other. You don't have the interrupts. You know that messages are handled in the order that they arrive, so you're never worried about you getting some sort of interrupt and like, oh, I'm in the middle of some operation, I'm not sure what my state's gonna be. You always know that, oh, yeah, a message arrives, it gets put in the queue, it's gonna handle it in the order. And then it's performant. If performance is an issue, find out about the performance for your specific application. All I know is that it's never been a problem for me. That's right, good enough, right? Like performance, generally is like the last thing I'm ever worried about. If I run into it, then I'll find out if my code is running too slow. But it's because I've got bugs long before performance is an issue. But I do know that Elixir is used on large servers. Pepsi uses Elixir. That's like kind of the biggest company I know of. It's great for web stuff, if large scale stuff. All right, there's more. Immutable data. That was a weird one, getting used to. After I got used to immutable data, the fact that you have mutable data in a language is just mind-boggling. I feel like it's crazy that you could pass an object to a function and it could change it, and you don't even maybe know that it got changed, right? Like how do you live like this? So immutable data is fantastic, and because Elixir was built, with that as like kind of a cornerstone, it's not like it's just copying every object, right? So it can be, what do you call it? Yeah, like it's, well, there's a word, I've forgotten it, but it's not wasteful. They're clever about how they are, bringing data into a function. It's not just a copy cut, right? So then you've got a great interactive shell. One of the things I dislike the most about C++ is that it's hard to kind of just mess around with the language. I know there are some interactive shell tools, and if you're not familiar with like what an interactive shell is, we'll have an example that shows it. But it's so nice to be able to just like open up a shell and test out a function and see how it works, and get the docs and see like, oh, how does this function work? I can just ask for help, and you can test out your code and just make some changes. And as the other nice thing is that Elixir, you can recompile without having to stop the program. You can just hot swap code, so I can make changes, type a function in again, see how that works, and we'll show that in a demo real quick too. Writing tests is super easy. You basically it's all built in. You just write a test and you can run it. There's no you don't have to worry about CMake or some Google test files or whatever. It's just out of the box. Testing is really easy, which is nice, because I think often for me the biggest sort of like barrier is just getting the tests set up, which means I don't write tests, right? If I'm in a different language, I don't write a lot of tests, even in Elixir, but don't talk about that. If you're into web stuff, Phoenix is where you want to go. That's an excellent framework. I don't do any web stuff, so I can't tell you about Phoenix, but I know there's a lot of people that love it, and it is fast. Phoenix Live View is kind of a, subset of that, where you can just really easily get a page that is, updating if you have any sort of telemetry or something that you want data to be updating really quickly. Phoenix Live View is great for that. Scenic is a graphical framework. We're going to see what we can do with some Phoenix stuff. And then Ecto, that's kind of the Elixir database stuff. I don't do anything with databases, so I can't tell you about Ecto. But again, there's a lot more to Elixir than what you're going to see today. So if you're interested in those subjects, just take a look for yourself. You'll learn a lot more than if I tried to tell you about it. Okay, flawless demo. Let's get to that. All right, so this is just a simple. This is one of Scenic. This is like kind of like their out-of-the-box sample program. So this is all run in Elixir. I won't go through it a bunch. But like I use Scenic for my code because I've got a Raspberry Pi and I just need some simple data. And so like this is perfectly fine for me. You've got radio buttons, sliders, buttons like this. So you can see here, I've got another process that is just counting up every second and sending out a message. And this the Scenic scene has subscribed to that message, and so it's updating the scene every second. I can also this is my other button. So I've got this button here, or I said the Scenic people put in this button. It's going to crash this process that's running the scene, and we'll see what happens. So first of all, I'm going to hit that button. You'll notice you wouldn't have even noticed had we not given this error message. I guess the only thing that changed is that this went to unknown for a brief second, and I've got that because basically when the scene comes up, I don't know what the state of this count is, and so I want to say that it's unknown. But so I guess two things happen.
Yeah, it lost that.
It lost that, right? So it crashes, it comes up in a clean state. So this count always is going to start at 0. But we'll notice, of course, that this number is still counting up because that is a completely separate process. So that was completely unaffected by this crash. And we'll see, like here's my error message. So we got this big crash. Our scene reinitialized, and is that other process continued to send the count the whole time. So this is like, I don't know, what I love about Elixir is you can just have, like I said, if 99% of your code is flawless and you have one kind of troublesome thing, it's not going to take down the rest of your system. And all these processes can be supervised, meaning that you can have, so for example, this Scenic process is supervised. So it crashes, its supervisor says, gets notified, and then it brings the process back up. You can have it so that it will, the supervisor will always bring it back up. You can make it, let's say I only want it to initialize 3 more times before it just stops trying, right? So you're not just constantly reinitializing this thing. So you have different ways of kind of playing with the supervisor. You can have different supervision trees, right? You can have multiple supervisors for your processes, but you can really handle, for example, on the go-kart, I want to make sure that I can always at least kill the throttle and apply the brake. So I'm going to make sure that process is probably only supervised by a single supervisor. It's untouched. No matter what happens, I have that tiny little bit of code that's for sure going to be running. So you can just decide what is important, what can crash, what can't crash, how can I protect kind of the most vital parts of my code. So all right, that's the first demo. Oh, let's do a few more things. I said we could hot swap stuff. So
can you bump up your?
Oh yeah. It looks so big here, but it looks so small. Okay. The other thing that you're seeing here is that it's got a real nice kind of like console debugging. So you get some real-time, or it shows you the timestamp. You've got some different types of debug messages as far as colors. Okay, so what I want to do, I'm going to change the count. I'm just going to recompile. Okay, of course. Gosh dang it. Well, I don't want to. All right, let's just. Well, Control-C is going to stop. All right, let me get rid of the send count so I can. Man, George's demos went so well. Yeah. I knew I was playing.
I didn't have responsibility for when they failed.
All right, so we got this. We're no longer sending that text. So, okay, so I changed the count. Apparently. Oh yeah, okay. So it's incrementing by 1. I want it to increment by 2. I'm going to recompile. Why is it not? Oh, I just want counter. Sorry. Oh my gosh. All right. What the heck's going on? Dang. All right. Well, live demo. Anyway, if I were able to. Oh, I know why. All right, it's going to take a second. The type of shell that I opened up, I don't think was an interactive one. Now it's checking for dependencies. It's going to take a sec. Man, we were really onto something until we got here. I'm not connected to the internet. So what's happening now is it's trying to connect to the internet to check for dependencies. But okay, here we are. Here we go. I can type in this interactive shell. Yeah, sorry. The shell that we had earlier was not interactive. This should be incrementing by 2s. And we want it to increment by 1s now. I'm just going to recompile. And now it's incrementing by 1s, right? So being able to I didn't have to bring down anything. It didn't open this, I didn't have to close my program, bring it back up. Really nice. And again, this interactive shell is really handy. I can call, functions within my module. I think I've got one called getCount, right? So super helpful for trying to just test out small changes without having to bring down your whole system and bring it back up. I think I've beat that horse to death. So, okay, what about nerves? It's embedded Elixir. So you are just taking all of that code and I want to put it on a smaller device. So it's essentially the same architecture. We've just got a smaller Linux kernel, basically only what we need for our code to run. Still got the Beam VM, your code, and now you're able to talk to low-level hardware. If you've got UART, SPI, I2C, or GPIOs. These devices all have nerves targets made for them. So if you wanted to put nerves on it, this is out of the box will work for you. If you have basically if it can run Linux, it can run nerves. If you've got you can make custom Linux kernels for different devices, but this covers quite a few. I've got a Raspberry Pi 3 here. I think we're going to talk about, flawless demo number 2. Perfect. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me now. I'm sure we'll have time later. But okay, so let's click this. So this is going to boot up, and it's just going to run the code that I flashed on it, which was essentially the code that you saw running on my computer. So it's really nice. There's nothing you have to do as far as like telling Linux to run your program or anything. That's all built in. So we'll see if this works. Come on. Uh-oh. There we go. Okay. So right. Thank you. We got there. Yeah. So this is just running on the Pi, and I should be able to, perfect. So I've got it so it can see this would work great on a touchscreen, but you wouldn't be able to, obviously this is not a touchscreen. So same deal, this is, I think, so we're just gonna crash this, comes back up, the counter's still going. So, and like it's a one-line command to burn the firmware to put it on the Pi. So the nerves makes it super easy. They've got it's a great community, great documentation for as far as getting, even if you're new to Elixir, and want to go with nerves, just start at the nerves end, and they'll walk you through, how to get everything on your system. But so on the go-kart that you saw, this is a Raspberry Pi 3B, and it's connecting. I've got an Arduino for a lot of the low-level stuff, and I'm just communicating over UART. But that's running all my high-level code. All the path planning is in Elixir. All the communication between the Pi and the headset, that's all Elixir. So I think that's, I think that's it. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah.
So I had a question back.
Just for the audio.
Thank you. Back to kind of looking at the the processors. So I was curious about. I know how if one gets an error, the other ones are still going to run because they're on a different thread. But I'm curious about use cases where a processor is dependent on another one, and I guess I'm kind of curious what that process would be if, processor 2 is dependent on one, and if one errors out, how does that affect process 2?
So when you say dependent, what do you mean there?
Meaning that, are there any times where, like, said you had 4, and in that case, say the second one, is there, I guess with Elixir, do they ever have it where they're...
Right, it's not like process 2 started process 3, so if process 2 goes
Correct,
down,
like it's not dependent on...
No,
okay.
No dependence at all. Yeah, so the Beam is handling all of that, and you're just telling it. So what we saw were gen servers, which is kind of this process that will live on. You could have agents or processes that would just like spool up, do something, and then die. The gen server is the kind of the persistent process. But yeah, they're all Serpent. So yeah.
There's no time where you could
It- yeah.
So I saw you plug in the Raspberry Pi, the HDMI cable, but I'm wondering, was there any external power, or is that like the amount of time it took to boot up? Was it booted up right there?
Oh, I had a power bank as well. Yeah.
Okay. Was it already on power? Because it seemed like it came up really fast.
No, that was I plugged in the. You saw everything.
That was the cold start.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Cold start. Like, a couple of seconds.
Wow.
Which is great, right? Because it's just booting up with the minimal Linux and then running your code, and that's it.
I'm impressed by that startup time. But also, I guess the other question I had was, obviously the UI was pretty simple for the demo. Have you seen examples of a more advanced UI? Do they have the tools to build like a prettier interface, or is it intended to be simple?
Well, I think, if you wanted prettier, I'd probably go the Phoenix route. Like, you're basically making a web page at that point. And so, there are a lot of companies that are making, real web pages. And
Thank you for your answers. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Can you tell us anything specific about Nerve and how it interacts with Pi cameras or anything like that, if you've done any visualization?
There are definitely some libraries for, using the camera. I think it's a camera with probably called PyCam or something. So people have done just using the onboard.
Have you used it for anything? What was the most interesting thing?
I don't think I have. I pretty much only use Nerves for autopilots. This seems to be the thing I focus on.
So you're not using that for like object collision detection?
Correct. And I probably wouldn't. There is some computer vision or like machine learning libraries in Elixir. I'd probably do that on something else. I've tended to just use it for the things that absolutely had to be robust. Yeah.
The back.
Is there any other like devices like PCBs you try to run Elixir on? Any besides Raspberry Pi?
Let's see. I've just run on Pis because they're the easiest. I know. I think there's someone trying to put it on like a ESP32, something a little smaller. The Mango Pi, Pi Zero.
So it's no limitation for Technica Elixir to run on any PCBs.
Yeah, it's just if it can run Linux, you can run Nerves, and I mean it'll run on Mac and Windows stuff.
Thank you.
Linux, yeah.
Any other questions as well? One over here, yeah.
My question is that how did you get the Raspberry Pi to just boot up the minimal Linux kernel and just run that GUI?
Yeah, so that is basically when you install Nerves, that it'll do it for you. You just tell it what your target is. So I mean, it's really like a one-line command. You just say, I've got a Raspberry Pi, and I want you to burn this firmware, and it will burn the firmware, upload it to the Pi, and it's just so on the SD card. It's just basically your Linux kernel and your code, and it will run it for you. So it's so easy out of the box. If it weren't easy, I wouldn't know how to do it. So
I had a question on that note, which I'll save for last.
Hi. So my question was, why did you pick Elixir? You gave me some examples, right? Like it's fault tolerant due to the services. You said something about concurrency in the talk title, but is it easy for concurrency specifically? Like, okay, because like if I compare, like if I'm like, oh, I want an easy concurrency language, I'll go like Go or something, right? Or if I classically hear about embedded safe things, I hear you use Rust. Now, I'm saying I hear because I don't know. I haven't tried using Rust. But what made you pick Elixir specifically? Because I've heard other people have these strengths too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, I was working at a company called Kitty Hawk. About 6 years ago, we were building a eVTOL, so like a multi-rotor, single-person passenger aircraft. And like the smartest software engineer there, in my opinion, he wanted to convert the whole code base to Elixir. We were running, Rust, and I was like, okay. I was interested, and he was like the evangelist that converted me. I was like, all right, he knows a lot more than I do. But just the more he talked about it, it was really easy for me to pick up, which is nice. Yeah, when you mentioned the concurrency, and I very well could be using the word concurrency wrong, so let me know. But if I just think about, okay, I have 2 pieces of code and I want them to talk to each other and run, simultaneously, and not have to worry about that. I'm not worried about handling any, these threads that, like in maybe Python, I want to have a thread start something else, and I got to worry about it coming back, right? I can just have 2 things running side by side, and they talk. It's so easy to get them to talk because it is just message passing. I'm not holding on to references of an object, trying to, call function from that object. So I think it was approachable, especially, I don't have a CS background, so being able to, I knew what I wanted it to do, and just getting it to do that, I felt was a short path. But I've never used Go. I don't know. It was basically it worked for me, and I was like, oh, well, this is. I stopped looking, I guess. You know what I mean? Like I married my high school sweetheart because there was just like, why, like why?
Yeah, that's a valid point. Yeah, if you already know it, why learn something?
Yeah,
if it all works.
I haven't run into any, I guess, like big barriers where I was like, oh, this is a bad choice. I think Rust would be great for the lower level side. So, like I said, I've got an Arduino board running, Arduino on the cart. I would love to replace that with Rust at some point, if I really needed it to be, more fault tolerant and safer. I think, the Arduino is probably the weak point of the whole solution. So yeah.
But it works. So
it works.
Why would you replace it?
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
All right. Question in the front.
Oh, well, I'll talk your ear off about my project, so
yeah,
I'll do that after.
Yeah, anybody want to come talk to Greg on anything in detail? We can always pull up a chair over by the dining area. You can just talk away. So we'll have plenty of time to do that. Any other questions specifically about the talk? I know I had one, which was you mentioned that to deploy to Raspberry Pi, it's pretty much a one-liner change. Aside from that, did you notice any other differences in resource usage and how to manage resources, considering it's a different device? Have you run into any qualms with that, or is it all kind of managed for you by that VM layer in the stack?
Yeah, I haven't run. I guess my only experience was I was trying to run code on a Pi 0 and it was too slow. Like I was sending enough messages that it would get bogged down and stuff wouldn't make it places. And so I was like, okay, I needed to beef it up, but it wasn't like the beam didn't tell me that. I kind of like figure out, okay, I knew it ran on a Pi 3 and it didn't run on a Pi 0, so it just clearly wasn't, because I've got loops running at 100 hertz and it was just enough to kind of get bogged down. None of the stuff I've done has required like a ton of performance. So it's, again, like I haven't really pushed the limits of it, so I really don't know much about
Fair enough.
Where the limits are.
Okay.
You reminded me one thing too. Nerves, there's a project called Nerves Hub where you can remotely update. You can keep track. So some people are using it. SmartRent is a company. My apartment, actually, they're in my apartment. So all the utilities and stuff are managed by SmartRent. So like the wireless door, door unlock, they're running Nerves. It's like one of the companies. It was fun to actually, I'm living in a Nerves building. So they've got thousands of devices that are all managed. They can update the code. OTA is super easy for that. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, everyone give a hand for Greg for his talk. Thank you so much. Awesome slides, by the way. I have to commend you for all that.
What is the icons that you're using?
So I just made it in Canva, and that was just some of the. I've got Canva Pro, so I don't know. I just stayed with the theme though. Yeah.
Thanks again.
Should have just made it with ChatGPT, I think. But
ChatGPT is the life hack.
Yeah.
Check, check. Am I still on? You're still on? Hello? Check, check. Okay, cool. Oh, whoa, what happened there? That's weird. That is... I've never seen that before. First time for everything. Flawless demo, guys. All right. All right, let's see if I could get this working again. Yeah, let me just see here. Okay, there we go. Full screen. There. Oh, something happened. All right. For some reason that button's not working, but I will go over to here and just refresh. How's that sound? No. Oh, is that what it is? I swear I'm on the Wi-Fi here. Turn it off. Turn it back on. Could be the VPN that I'm on. Darn it. Okay. Connecting to the Netherlands? Nope, don't want that. There you go. There we go. All right, I think this is a good sign. All right. Thanks for bearing with us here. Almost. But not quite. Close enough, yeah. I'm just going to quit this. Connect. Push all the buttons. All right. Well, that's fine. Okay. All right. Cool. Cool. I think this is working now. There. Technology. All right. And this is great, guys. How many developers in a room does it take to get slides to work? Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, we can still.
One OS and Elixir.
All right. Yeah, just let's give one more quick round of applause for our speakers. Thank you so much. Thanks again for doing that. I know it's not easy to do a talk, especially when it's gonna the presentation software is gonna act like this. But nonetheless, really thank you. Great stuff. We like to end the kind of presentation segment with just a short segment where anyone can kind of in the community can make an announcement if there's something a project they're working on or an idea that they have and they want to like share with the community and say, hey, come talk to me about that. This is an opportunity for you guys. So you can also mention other events, other meetups that you're interested in that maybe you're hosting or you want to like come check out yourself and then share and bring some other people along. We welcome that as well. As well as your current Roman Empire, what has been on your mind, from you can't stop thinking about. Feel free to just tell the community about what it is that you're interested in, or just introduce yourself if you like. So, quick show of hands if anyone is no peer pressure. If anyone has something they want to announce or want to share with the rest of the community. Cool, we got one. So we got Julio over here. Feel free to come up. Zane, can you get the light? Cool.
All right. Hey, guys. Nice to meet you. My name is Julio. So a lot of us know that I'm on the job market right now. And I was talking and I was thinking that I could prepare a talk to show all the skills that I've been doing, all the things that I've been doing. And also, I've been working on a project because I came from Brazil, and I always forget to call my family over there. So I think it would be good to show this project and also all the tips for new people that are looking into the field. So I think that's it. Yeah, maybe next talk.
Yeah, we love it. All right. Love that. All right. Awesome. Thanks, Julio. Perfect. Anyone else got an announcement they want to share, or if not, we're good. Yeah. Greg.
Totally unrelated to AI. I just saw the current Roman Empire thing and liked the invitation. I spent most of my free time in the past month reading about corn. You got to do something with your life, right? So if you want to talk about corn or you know things about corn and you want to tell me.
What is that?
Oh, the crop.
The crops. Okay.
The crop. No, I don't think I could spend a whole month reading about a band. Though maybe challenge me.
Cool. All right. If anyone wants to talk about corn of the crops, okay. Coriano. Ladies first? Sure. Here I am, Mari.
Hi, I'm Marissa, and I just moved to San Diego, so please invite me to your other tech events.
Woo!
Yay.
Welcome to San Diego.
Yeah, so I just moved here for my post-grad job. I just graduated college. My current Roman empire is game dev because my job uses C#, so I've been really into like learning game dev, Unity, and also procedural art. So I thought your demo was really cool. And I also do know about corn because I did botany in college. So I did hydroponics and stuff, and we were doing corn, tilapia. Well, it was hydroponics, so tilapia was like eating the corn stuff. And yeah, that's it. And I also am recording stuff. I do make TikTok tech content for all the. I know TikTok is like people are biased about it. They're like, oh, stuff. But you want to be in my TikTok? Let me know.
Cool.
Yes. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you. Yeah.
What's the difference between corn and maize?
What is the difference between corn and maize? Okay, that sounds like a sidebar. That sounds like a sidebar.
But there's heirloom corn.
I will tell you all about it.
Coriato. All right.
Thank you, guys. I'm a part of another nonprofit tech group called Code Connector. And this coming Saturday at 11 a.m., we're doing a virtual code share where you can just bring some of your work and present it and get feedback from it. So I just wanted to invite everybody out there. If you go to codeconnector.io, so codeconnector.io, we've got a meetup. Love for you guys to come out there. It's been really, really fun. We've been averaging around 8 to 10 people presenting. And so it's 2 hours of just people with 10 minutes. And they kind of talk about their project and get feedback if they need that. But it's more about just presenting your work, getting comfortable with kind of presenting your work to others that don't know about your work, what hopefully would help when it comes to like interviews or things like that. So just want to throw that out there. Say again?
Where is that?
It's virtual, so it's the nonprofit is called codeconnector.io, and this Saturday we're doing the code share at 11 a.m. It's virtual. It's through Google Hangout. Sorry.
Okay.
Yep.
Would you be able to drop the link on our Discord as well?
Yeah.
So that makes it easy. Cool.
Perfect.
Thanks, Coriam.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. All right.
Hey, what's going on, you guys? I'm JR Montez. This is my first SD DEVx event. So I'm not a developer. I'm not technical at all. I haven't written one line of code ever, but I'm more on the business side. I've been in the tech sales, SaaS sales world for over 5 years now. So if any of you guys have a product or a project that you've been working on and you want to take it to market, I'm happy to chat. Just kind of talk about like building a marketing funnel, how to bring in your first set of customers, finding an ideal customer profile, things like that. So I'll be sticking around here after this and excited to meet you guys.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah.
Hey guys, so my first time also. So I have a development background. I've been working over 20 years with IT. So kind of started with web design, went full stack, and now I'm kind of going back around to my roots. So web design, but also branding, strategy. So I like working with people. I like the psychology of just reaching an audience and trying to figure out problems. So that's really what's interesting to me. That's like my passion. So as much as I love tech and geeking out, but it's also, kind of a new chapter in doing that. So I've been an entrepreneur for over 15 years. So if you guys want to talk about like how to start a business or just even, how to reach the audience that you're trying to connect to as far as, your brand, and a lot of people don't understand like the difference between what a brand is, not just logos and designs and colors, but there's more about voice and tone and originality and just who you really are. Yeah, feel free. I love to chat about that as well. So,
cool.
Yeah.
What was your name, by the way?
Richard.
Richard.
Yeah.
Richard. Cool. Thanks, Richard. Awesome. All right. We got one more. I think, was there anyone else? There we go.
What is current Roman Empire?
All right, it's a meme. I'll explain it a little bit later.
I just want to say thank you to guys who helped me with the bug last week. Oh, not last week. Last meetup, like in the beginning. So you saw us right around there. Like I was frustrated. It's not like that we called the variable inappropriate word. So we fixed it and stuff like that. So it was rookie mistake on my side. It's visa dates. So I didn't know that actually when you work with the cloud servers and you submit it in database, doesn't matter what time zone you put it, it will transfer to default time zone where the server is. Learning from mistakes, and now I just use actually the method in JavaScript, which is to local string, which will convert string and to local time zone on the client side.
Was this regarding your last presentation?
No, it's not about presentation. It was just back in my
Okay.
some habit app and stuff like that. So it was not working.
Lesson there is time zones are hard.
yeah. So days are hard. So yeah, it was like, oh, man. So thank you, Cheer Up for community to put me on the right path.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, it's really awesome to see the community come together to really solve problems for each other. That's what we're all about, you know. Not only just sharing cool things, but also lending a helping hand. It really makes you feel good, makes the other person feel good, and that comes back around, a bit of a karma. So, anyone else have an announcement they want to share, or? I think we're all good. Well, thanks so much for being an awesome community, guys. Appreciate it. Final note then, before we can get back to just networking and hanging out. Check out our website. It has all the information you would need to find if you want to submit a talk. I think one of us suggested or was interested in that. You can find that on devx.network, the form to submit a talk. Join our Discord community. They're very awesome. They're sharing cool stuff all the time, talking about anything. It's just a great place to be when you're not at the event. That also you can find on our website. As well as our event calendar, so that way you can keep in touch and keep coming back and fostering this awesomeness that we're doing here. So thanks again for coming, and feel free to just hang out and share some of those cool ideas. I'm really excited to talk more. So thanks again.